The night my neighbor tried to hide in our house. 3 years ago, my partner and I bought our first home together. It wasn't big. It wasn't flashy. It was a modest two-story house on a quiet suburban street where nothing ever really happened. The kind of neighborhood where people actually wave when you drive by. Where trash cans are lined up neatly at the curb every Thursday morning. Where porch lights glow softly at night and you can hear crickets instead of traffic. We were proud of it. The house needed minor cosmetic work, fresh paint, updated fixtures, but structurally it was solid. The neighbors were friendly without being intrusive. The couple next door, in particular, were ideal. Late 30s. No kids. Quiet. Polite. For about a year and a half, life was stable. Predictable. Peaceful. Then one evening, while we were out front pulling weeds from the flower bed, our neighbors approached us and told us they were planning to sell. They had received a job opportunity out of state and needed to relocate quickly. We were surprised. Even more surprised when they mentioned the house might go below market value because they wanted a fast sale. Their home was slightly larger than ours. It had a proper driveway instead of street parking. A finished garage. A remodeled kitchen. And the biggest selling point for my partner, a deep soaking bathtub. We weren't planning to move. But sometimes opportunity presents itself quietly. Within a month, we purchased their house. And we listed ours, the smaller one directly next door, for sale. The process moved quickly. The market was competitive, and within weeks we had multiple offers. Several potential buyers sent handwritten letters describing their dreams of raising families and planting gardens. One couple stood out. They introduced themselves as recently relocated professionals. Quiet. Hardworking. Private. They mentioned wanting stability and a peaceful neighborhood. We chose them. They moved in about 4 weeks later. The first week after they arrived was completely normal. The husband would give a brief nod if we crossed paths. The wife walked a small French bulldog in the evenings. They didn't socialize much, but neither did we. It felt like a comfortable distance. Looking back, that's what makes what happened next so unsettling. Because it started small. About 2 weeks after they moved in, we were watching TV around midnight when we heard a sudden, violent bang against the shared wall. It was loud enough to make us both jump. We muted the TV and listened. Silence. Then, abruptly, music blasted at full volume. Not party music. Not conversation. Just heavy bass and distorted sound, loud enough to vibrate the glass in our cabinets. We looked at each other. Maybe they're still unpacking, my partner said. After about 20 minutes, the music stopped as suddenly as it had started. The next day, everything seemed normal. We shrugged it off. But it happened again. 3 nights later. This time closer to 1 a.m. Heavy footsteps. Something dropped. Music blasting. Then silence. It wasn't constant. It wasn't every night. It wasn't enough to justify calling the police or filing a complaint. It was just enough to feel wrong. About a week later, I noticed something strange in the afternoon. The husband pulled into the street, and his car looked like it had survived a demolition derby. Deep scrapes ran along both sides. Not minor scratches, long, gouged metal lines stretching from front fender to back bumper. It looked as though the vehicle had been squeezed violently between 2 solid objects. Later that evening, while taking out the trash, I casually asked him what happened. He froze for just half a second too long. Oh, I scraped a concrete post in a parking garage, he said. And then a trailer swung wide and clipped the other side. The explanation felt rehearsed. I nodded and said, "That's rough," and left it there. Something about the damage didn't line up with the story. Then came the first major incident. It was early evening, around 6 p.m., when my phone rang. It was the neighbor. His voice was strained. Panicked. "There are two men outside my house," he said quickly. "They're messing with my security cameras. Please, can you look? Call the police." I stepped outside immediately. Sure enough, two men were standing near his front door. They weren't wearing masks. They weren't rushing. They were just standing there, talking. One of them glanced toward our house briefly, then back at his. I felt a chill. I went back inside and called the police. It took about 20 minutes for officers to arrive. By then, the two men were gone. Nothing appeared stolen. No forced entry. The wife came racing home shortly after, nearly skidding into the curb. She ran inside to check on their dog. The officers took statements and left. But later that night, something bothered me enough to review our doorbell footage. What I saw made my stomach tighten. The two men had been standing calmly in front of both houses, ours and theirs. They weren't acting nervous. They were discussing something. At one point, one of them pointed directly at our house. Then they both looked back at the neighbors. It looked less like a spontaneous burglary and more like a discussion. Like they were deciding which house to target. I told the responding officer the next day that it felt staged. He nodded politely. We never heard back. A week passed. The atmosphere felt heavier. The late-night noises continued sporadically. Then everything escalated. I was at a friend's small gathering about 15 minutes away when my partner texted me. "Music next door is insane again." I didn't think much of it. Then my phone rang. His voice was different. Not annoyed. Not irritated. Afraid. A car just drove through our front yard, he said. It slammed into their front door. My heart dropped. He described two men jumping out of the vehicle and frantically loading electronics into the trunk. Large TVs, professional speakers, expensive-looking equipment. "They're the same guys," he whispered. "I'm sure of it." This time, police response was immediate. 7 minutes. They arrived while the men were still loading the car. Officers surrounded the vehicle. When asked for identification, the driver calmly stated our neighbor's full name. But here's the thing. In the 9 months they'd lived next to us, our neighbor had spoken very little English. Simple phrases. Broken sentences. The man in the driver's seat spoke fluently. Without hesitation. The officers immediately realized something was wrong. The suspects attempted to flee. A short but intense pursuit followed through our quiet suburban streets before police boxed the vehicle in. 3 arrests were made. But as officers secured the scene, my partner heard movement inside the neighbor's house. Police went back in. They pulled out a third suspect hiding near the back hallway. The situation felt surreal. Like we were suddenly living inside a crime documentary. While giving our statement inside our own home, the doorbell rang. We both turned. Standing on our porch was our actual neighbor. I barely recognized him. His face was swollen and purple. Blood had dried along his nose and mouth. One eye was nearly swollen shut. His arm hung at an unnatural angle. He looked like someone who had been beaten within an inch of his life. The officer stepped forward. "Sir, what happened to you?" The neighbor refused to answer. He wouldn't cooperate. Wouldn't file a report. Wouldn't explain anything. Eventually, because he refused to identify himself as a victim or press charges, the officer had no choice but to let him return to his house. Later that night, around 10:30 p.m., he came back. He looked worse. He was trembling. He told us, in broken sentences, that he had made mistakes. That he owed people money. That he had gotten involved in something he shouldn't have. He claimed someone was trying to kill him. Then he asked if he could stay the night inside our house. I felt frozen. My partner gently refused. We didn't want to involve ourselves in whatever this was. Instead, my partner offered to drive him to the hospital. We dropped him off. Or at least we thought we did. Around 1 a.m., our dog began growling. Not barking. Growling. Low. Steady. Kind of growl he only makes when someone is outside. We checked the security camera. It was him. Standing on our porch. Pressing the doorbell repeatedly. We didn't move. We didn't answer. We just watched. Then headlights turned onto our street. The neighbor panicked. He scrambled off the porch and crouched behind our car in the driveway. Bleeding. Shaking. Hiding. The car stopped. A woman stepped out. His wife. She walked slowly toward him. When she saw him under the streetlight, she began crying. Not softly. Not quietly. A deep, guttural, broken sobbing that echoed down the empty street. They didn't argue. They didn't yell. She helped him stand. They got into the car and drove away. We never saw him again. 3 days later, she returned alone. She told us quietly she didn't think he was coming back. She collected the dog, removed a few belongings, and eventually moved out. No explanations. No closure. To this day, we don't know what he was involved in. Drugs. Debt. Organized crime. We'll never know. Sometimes, late at night, when everything is silent, I still think about the way he hid behind our car. Like he wasn't hiding from the police. He was hiding from something worse. And I can't help but wonder if whatever he was running from ever came back looking for him. Or if, somehow, it's still out there, watching.